Welcome. I'm going to talk about my work ratio, and I kind of did these like four chapters, like so you can see them here. And let me just start. Like, hi, I'm Julian, and I work with text, fragments, bits, and code. I'm a creative technologist, a new media artist, an educator, and many, many more things. But this is just like what I have been collecting personally as titles over the years. Um, I've been working with code since I was 14, like starting out on the web, like writing stupid PHP and Perl scripts. And then from there on, like kind of developed this over the years, like evolved it actually until in university, I started to study digital media with a special focus in new media arts and physical installations, where I would use code, um, to build these experiences in a room, in a physical room. So there's like this overlap between the digital, which is the code, and the physical installation that can break at any point because it's obeying the laws of gravity. Um, I have a interest since my study times in cybernetics, which is for those of you who don't know it, it's a field that was conceived in the 1940s by especially Norbert Wiener and his, let's say, groundbreaking book, Cybernetics or Control and Communication in the Animal and the Machine. Like, how do we control nature with the help of simple rules? Through machines, for example. And it's basically synthesized ideas from mathematics, engineering, and biology. And the groundwork, however, was laid earlier during the Second World War research on control systems for anti-aircraft predictors, so military use. But if we break it down, like in cybernetics, this is the classical cybernetic loop. We have a sensor that is like connected to the outside world. We have a controller that is working on some sort of algorithm that can sense the off value, either plus or minus, negative or positive. So we can have negative loops or positive loops, and the controller tries to steer it into that direction to an ideal output. So cybernetics, the word Kyber is also from Greek, controlling, steering, the steermanship. We have the other system that's basically then the output of the action, and then it's going into a feedback. So this is what we would call the first order of cybernetics, and it's being used in mechanical, biological, or even social settings. And yeah, it's mainly focusing on this like feedback loops, adaptation, self-regulation, and showing how systems maintain stability and evolve through interaction with their environment. My focus is more like, let's say, on the second order of cybernetics, where we have the observer included inside of a system. So you cannot make an experiment without being part of it. Like if you have a laboratory and you're doing something, like the moment you breathe, you're part of the experiment. Like there's no way you're not giving feedback to the system. And second order cybernetics is basically then emphasizing on self-reference, reflexivity, and the observation that shapes what is observed. I think this works extremely well if you're an artist, a designer, or a creative in general, maybe even like in life, because you're about changing, you're like always improving yourself, and you're continuously evaluating yourself in a way. The second part I wanted to talk about this is more like my philosophy. So when we're working with the digital, or rather code, the question is always like, what is the material's physical counterpart? In art school, we would use all sorts of material like wood, metal, different polymers like plastic, and so on and so forth, and we would explore them. But it's like they're very physical materials, And the digital is unlike those materials because you can multiply it as much as you want and make exact copies of it that don't degrade in quality, and usually like they don't just change over time unless you have a physical part that has to hold it and degrades. So until a couple of years ago, I was just thinking like, okay, what is the counterpart? And then I had this idea that code actually behaves like clay, because while we are writing it, it feels very soft. Like we're touching the code in sensitive places. We're building up structures, and then they may break because there is a bug occurring at the wrong part of the code, and the whole thing crashes down. We have just errors in real time, and it can be a very brittle material if you think about code. But if we would spun it too fast, it just breaks. And then when an exhibition comes up or a deadline, we talked about this earlier, all of a sudden it has to work. It has to get hard, like the clay goes into an oven and gets baked into a pot, for example. And that's what we would call a version that we just deliver. And then afterwards, we can look at that previous version again and then make it soft again, meddle around with it, and just mold it furthermore. So I think like in the artistic practice, it's like a nice metaphor on how to understand what code could be. I just wanted to really quickly go through a lot of slides just to show you how I got from university basically to this year 2025. And it starts on the left side with like these physical projects. I have a few of them which are going from my study time into my basically professional life. And then there's a bridging moment where I'm going through this like wall in the middle of text mode into the digital basically again. And I see text mode as a bridging point in my artistic career at this point. So the first project quickly is called Emile, and it's a homage to Emile Bordeaux, who is the founder, inventor of the Bordeaux code. It's a 5-bit binary code, and basically the predecessor of ASCII or EBCDID code, and was intended for telecommunication and electronic devices representing the entire alphabet. So with 5-bit, you can get all of the letters in there. This machine represents these 5 bits by 5 marbles. And there are like some small switches and these punch cards, like what we would see yesterday with Amy, like when she was talking about, was she talking about the punch cards? I think so. No, it was a different talks, I'm sorry. But this is like a homage basically to punch cards. The marbles are getting stopped physically from reaching those trigger points at the top, and then we can spell out the message. In this case, the message is a patient waiter is no loser, which was the very first message that was sent via telefax in 5-bit code back then between two telecommunication specialists, let's say. And here's just like very, very simple code. Like it was just like if switch 0, 1, and 2 are activated and 3 and 5 not, then just display this letter. So we could map all different combinations from the alphabet to those 5 switches for spelling out things. This is my master thesis, which was dabbling again with cybernetics and also the realms of speculative design. And this machine can send a single bit through soil with the help of fungi that lives inside of this, tub or basin. And to transmit a single bit, it takes a very long time because I was using different liquids to manipulate the pH levels within the fungi, so it would kind of retract or expand again. And there's like this physical part, like if the room was too hot or too cold, like things would just dry out, or it would not really send that bit. So there was no clear communication, but this was just like about that single information, this little fragment that can travel through the system. The whole master thesis was also wrapped within speculative design. So I made up a fictitious group of scientists that worked during the Cold War in Europe, making like weird experiments with nature and computers. And in the background, you see like some of the other scenarios. And this machine is like a concrete example that would live in the room. There's a PCB for controlling just the motors, like little servos that you would also see on that plotter machine over there. And at that point, I was basically finishing my studies in digital media and moved to Berlin to join Studio TheGreenEyl, where we would build installations for museums and galleries. And this is, for example, a prototype. So I would always prototype in space with things so I can actually touch them. And for the installation, seltene Lichtmomente, rare moments of inspiration, which is now permanently installed in the Bauhaus Museum in Weimar. And in order to finalize this object and somehow get a grip on this, I was prototyping software in processing, because the final object weighs around 900 kilograms and is like 4 by 3 times 0.5 meters long. So it's a massive thing. And on this prototype, I could play out the animations before I would actually have them in the final installation running. And this was nice, like a preview. You can do anything on your computer, like digitally, and then later check it out. And in this case, since it's basically just a huge sort of 360-degree screen, it worked very nicely. And funnily enough, we were thinking about maybe getting a proper developer on this project, because I'm not a developer, like artist designer. This is Vimeo not loading. My prototype software still runs now in the Bauhaus Museum, and especially with processing. So that's a story I like to tell from time to time, because it's just nice that it hasn't been crashing since then. And in my studio, they would say, like, why would you use this, and why don't you use something like C++ that is more stable? Like, it's good. But going on, like we would get like these tasks, like how do you make a 20-year-old archive of a graphic designer very tangible? Like what strategies can you use to get into the weeds of this? And I use processing a lot to just get my thoughts out and work with this. And I'm not going into the details of this, but this is like basically, if you want the brain of this one graphic designer, Jumping He, and we were doing this as a welcome intro to his solo exhibition. And it felt very nice, because there are like a lot of parts that would come together, but there were already like always these little fragments that we would see. So just quickly, like just overview Bauhaus, temporary, working with screens, large screens, small screens. Here's my intern playing around, and this was a very expensive e-ink screen that my ex-boss, basically broke, and then we turned it into art in the studio. But what has always been following me is like this quote by Marshall McLuhan, where we shape our tools and therefore our tools shape us. So the moment we start making something, it has an influence back to us. It's like in this cybernetical sense of feedback loop, that we are never without feedback. Even if it's like software, it can influence us. And I started at one point, I was like at some inflection point during COVID, Corona pandemic, and started to work on little things like after hours when I was done with my day job. And I took much inspiration from this like split flap mechanics that you would see in airports and train stations back in the days. Nowadays, everything is digital, which is a pity. But I started to develop this software. On the top left, you can see like a previous version that was very rudimentary. And then since then, like it has become more. And it's my go-to tool whenever I have like design commissions and they want me to do something very quick. So I can iterate with this tool now through these things and generate graphics like this. So this is from, I think, 2022, like very early February or something. But I basically fell in love with this old school palette of the Commodore 64 and the font of it, even though I never had a C64. Like I'm a Nintendo kid. Like I grew up just with Nintendo and never really touched PCs for coding until like a later age. But you can see these colors, which are basically from the original C64, and the font you can here also see. And I started to dabble around with this quite a lot. I made some installations in space. So this is like a screen. It's a different modification than what you would see on the screen from Niklas, because here I basically took off the polarizing layer. So then you just get a white screen, and then you need to take a polarized filter, and I put it inside of the room to give, even though this is like an open object, a personal viewing experience to someone who is standing in front of this. And I called this the stochastic oracle, so it would like predict your future from the I Ching. Like I was using the I Ching as a resource. Like I think anyone is doing that at this point because it's about randomness and whatever you can read in random things. So in 2023, I built this collection, which was dropped on FX Hash called FSM, which is short for finite state machine. And a finite state machine is just a thing that runs through different states, finishes them, goes to a different mode if certain conditions are met. And then it looks like, okay, what else could I do? So it's like endlessly looping, like through different modes, but they might not be the same, like motion is a little bit different. And here I already started to use like something I will come to in a second, algorithm called 10 print character go to 10 something, which is like about placing single values for each grid cell. The work Pheno I just released last month is a generative, I call it living plant, because you can kind of evolve it through mechanisms from a ground level where it's just a sproutling until it's like a big plant, like on the left side or the right side. And here I was using the Commodore 64 palette as a 3D space. So there's a sort of random walker, like the plant can be put somewhere in XYZ Cartesian space, and then it can move up, down, left, right, and there it would basically run into those colors. So at 0, 0, 0, there's black. On the other side is like 255, 255. That's white, and then in between you find green, blue, and so on and so on. So this plant, as it evolves through space and runs through space, it would also take new colors and drop off other colors. So those are the other parts that happened before. And I think in 2023, I was asked basically by Expanded Art to come up with a new collection. And I started sketching in code right away to build a system which I thought was interesting because it was a little bit more freeform. But for that system, I wanted to have still some kind of a rigid underlying engine. And there I came up with like this division. This is something that a lot of designers usually see, like, oh, you start with a simple layout that has either 12 or 16 columns that you can then divide into, let's say, rhythmic parts, or that feel like good, like divided by golden ratio or something. So if we have now this like 12 columns and fill it up just with 12, then we would have just a single area, right? But if we say we have a different aspect ratio or ratio in there, then it's like 1:11. So this is what you see in the work, ratio like underneath the division of the surface. Here's like a 4x4x4, and sometimes the artwork can also subdivide even further, so you get like more complex divisions. But this was something that I built for a completely different work, which I had to abandon, even though it was nice. It didn't go into the direction that I thought it should go because it was too free. Like I would work with a lot of symmetry, and then you always run into troubles of drawing dangerous symbols. Or it's a lot of chaos. So I had to revert, and we can see here like the GIF is not really running. I just took this ratio aspect idea and left it inside of the new sketches and played around with this a little bit more. But as you can see now, it is kind of hectic, and I'm changing also quite a lot of the sizes. Like sometimes there were very big pieces of letters and then sometimes small, and it didn't feel cohesive enough. Like on the right side, it's kind of cool that there's this like almost ominous countdown, but it would not always work that well. And if we think like in long form, like we want to always have a nice piece coming out of every mint that we do, this was a bit hard to somehow achieve and have a unity there. But yeah, here's some debug view from that mode, so you can kind of see like how it feels like when I was working on this and just like trying to prove something to myself that I can make it very fast, because I was working with a lot of single computations per little area that would completely stress out my computer. And if my computer is stressed out, then everyone else's computer will not be able to run it. That's how I usually feel. It has to run on the slowest machine. The problem here is for people who know shaders that I would run into a context loss. So the graphics unit is completely overbooked by just running this artwork. But I felt like it was still very nice just to run it as a screensaver from time to time. But I dropped it, picked it up again, dropped it, did something else. And then this year I had a solo show in Porto, and I did some midnight coding in bed. And they were saying like, this has to be a 9:16 format. And I was like, all right, good, let's try it 9:16. And it's very nice. And I also always love the setup when you put the MacBook to the side. Nice ambient light. But they had a remark like, your colors are too muted. It's a bit depressing. Can you leave the grimy Berlin just in Berlin and come up with something else? And I was like, all right. How about this color palette? It's from the retro fantasy console called Pico 8. And it is a bit like the C64 palette, but it's more pop. Then I was just running with that. Okay, let's try that. I swapped it in, and it already felt at times better. This is still a little bit of a different algorithm, but my time is almost out. But yeah, from here on, I basically then when I was asked to present a new work here at Responsive Dreams, I was like, okay, I have this algorithm basically in my back pocket, and I can do this in a very nice collection, hopefully. And I was searching for some time for just a title for this work. Like I was going through so many things, and usually I work, and then it just comes like the title just comes up from like a undersurface or subsurface, and then it's there. And in this case, like I was looking at this like ratio table that I showed you before with all of these numbers. Like, yeah, I think this is kind of good because in Latin it also means computation. Okay, there's computation always involved in anything, but there's also a reasoning, and it's about proportions, but more the reasoning part is like about relationships. So this 10 print character algorithm is from the C64 again, and it's about randomness on every step. So on this, you basically have two characters that you can show, like a diagonal that is like this, or like forward slash, backward slash. And there's a 50-50 chance that you either get like the forward slash or the backward slash with each step that you're doing. And by this repetition, you kind of get intricate patterns. And this is the main algorithm I'm actually employing in ratio. So when you see like all of these surfaces just going like there's like randomness at every step for every movement. And there's this book. You can download the PDF. It's very nice. Like it's full of these examples. But ratio, once again, has a different color palette because I didn't want to reuse the Pico 8 color palette. Again, I modified that one until I was satisfied. So this is like the color finding mechanism in ratio. So there you have a 10% chance of getting a monochromatic piece. There's always a 50% chance that you're adding like all of the gray shades, which are just number 11 and 15 in here. Colors can be swapped with 25% and so on. And you can see, on the right side, like what is the decision tree just to put this color palette together. And before I come to the end, there's like 3 more slides. This is the debug view. I heard you like debug views and to see how we are working. But down there, you see like all of the characters that have been selected now for this piece. And on the background, there's like a small WebGL render engine that is just transforming like this very simple, basic canvas into those character sprites. And then there's some small computation, but it's absolutely simple in the end, because I like to keep things simple so that when I have creative coding classes, I can also give that idea forward to those students and don't tell them like, hey, this is super complicated stuff, you will never do this. And like, no, this is absolutely easy. Creative coding is fun. Please go and do this today. Just drawing simple shapes, and P5.js is like, you can use commands like to draw a line, a rectangle, a circle very easily. You just need to know like how to use an X, Y coordinate, like from where to start and give it a diameter. And this is the debug view, but this is from the last few weeks, and I just noticed that the GIFs are at 120 frames, and now they're like absolutely stuttering. So I wanted to, I hope it goes to the last slide now. It's not. Here. So these are basically now the live mints that have been now minted yesterday. I think ratio has like 20 mints out of 128. And you can see the variety here already. Like you could have like a very like a black background or super poppy. I called this color, I think like sky cyan and orange punch, like from some of my predefined color palettes, or just like honey yellow. And yeah, and yeah, that's it. That's how we got to 2025. Thank you.